So if you have questions about food safety, um, the power went out. How long is my food going to be good for? I'm trying to can tomatoes, but I can't remember how much lemon juice to put in it. You name it. You can give us a call, and we are located all over the state, and we will see what we can do to help you out. Okay, so we are cooling off here, literally and figuratively, and we're going to talk about freezing fruits and vegetables at home. So it is that time of year that, if you have fruit and vegetables in your house, they may have come from a neighbor's, it could have come from a friend, or even your own garden. So, if you're visiting farmers markets to select your fruits and vegetables, or even if you're getting them from a CSA, those are all great places to take that produce and preserve it for winter. So preserving these flavors of summer, freezing is going to be probably the quickest and the most economical way to preserve fruits and vegetables. So the other thing I really like about it is there's no special tools that are required. We get into canning, and that can get pricey. So some of the advantages of freezing produce is it helps to retain natural colors. It retains the flavor and nutritional value. But before deciding to freeze a fruit or vegetable, we want to think about a few more things. So is this fruit or vegetable I'm selecting, is it going to freeze well? Do I like the texture? Do I have enough storage room in my freezer? So, and also you're looking at how much are utilities going to cost throughout the year. So some fruits and vegetables, they do freeze better than others. Some that you want to watch out for that really don't freeze well is going to be cabbage, celery, cress, cucumbers, endive, lettuce, parsley, and radishes. That's just to name a few. What happens is when they freeze, they get waterlogged and limp, and they also will oxidize easier. So what that means is like I can't say the word now. What's happening is like when your apples get brown, that happens to some of these vegetables and herbs also. So when it does oxidize, that can create unappetizing aromas and even weird flavors. So we want to be careful of that. So cucumbers and cabbage can be frozen as a marinated product. So like if you've had freezer slaw or freezer pickles, those aren't going to have the same texture as the regular slaw or pickles, but it's a nice way to preserve some of that produce. Okay, so food preservation starts with food safety. When preparing to preserve vegetables or fruits, the first steps are going to be for any food preparations is cleaning and sanitizing work surfaces, countertops, sinks, cutting boards, utensils, and so forth. And then next would be washing hands. So fruits and vegetables can be frozen in quantities for serving as a side dish or just the amount that you need for a specific recipe. And that can be really helpful and really convenient for preparing meals and different menus. So when we do go to select fruits and vegetables, we want to get the highest quality that we can get our hands on, because freezing, canning, drying, the fruit or vegetable is not going to get any better. So we want to start out with the best quality that we can. So working with good food safety measures, such as rinsing fruits and vegetables under cool running water, and with fruits and vegetables that have thicker skins, like potatoes or cantaloupe, these veggie scrubbers here are excellent for just getting extra soil off and getting any, microorganisms that might be hanging on. So the USDA does not recommend using any detergents or soaps or even the commercial produce washes. These products are not approved for use on food, even though we're washing our dishes and so forth with the detergent or the soap. But the thing is, with the fruits and vegetables, they're porous and they can absorb the soap or detergent. So if that's absorbed into the produce, then we end up consuming that, and that could cause illnesses. So to store frozen produce, we always want to make sure we're using freezer containers. When we are packing the food into those containers, we want to do it tightly, but not too much where we're going to crush it. We want to get out as much air as possible, because that air is not our friend when it comes to freezing. So there will be, you'll hear me talk about headspace in a little bit here. And what that is just a little space so that when things expand, when they freeze, there'll be room for it, rather than it exploding in your freezer, because that is no fun to clean up. So let's see here. The other thing is, we want to make sure when we are, whatever container we're using, we want to make sure that the edges or the seals are kept clean, because any of that is going to be an invitation for bacterial growth, or it's going to let air in, or it's going to just leak all over. So making sure you have tight lids, and if you have containers that aren't sealing real well, there is freezer tape that you can use to get the covers to fit tighter. So best practices are to label each package, including the name of the product, added ingredients. So like if you do sweetened strawberries and then you have your plain strawberries, you want to be able to know who's who. You can also do the quantity on there. So if you're doing a recipe, you know exactly, okay, I need a cup of zucchini shreds, and you don't have to measure that out frozen. You can just put it into that container that way, and it makes it much more convenient when you go to bake. Okay, so we have a video here that one of our team members has kind of hacked, I guess, and this is to get more air out of the freezer bag. Okay, you're not going to hear her very well because I didn't test out the sound, so I apologize for that, but you can see what she is doing. that is her trick. Actually, it looks like she really needs a third hand. So, fruits and vegetables, they should be frozen promptly after we start preparing and processing them. So freezers, those should be kept at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. The lower the temperature on the freezer, that is going to lengthen the amount of time that we're going to have quality produce. When we are freezing food, so we've processed it, we've put it into the container, now we're putting it into the freezer. A good rule of thumb is if you can lower the temperature of the freezer to about -10 degrees Fahrenheit and do that maybe 24 hours before, it's really going to help in quickly freezing that food that you put in there. So the quickest way to freeze the fruits and veggies that you put in there, keep them away from each other, give them a little breathing space, a little social distance, so that cold air can circulate and get that frozen quicker. And then after they're frozen, you can kind of move things around so it's more convenient. So be careful about overloading the freezer because that's going to slow down how quickly it can freeze. And it's getting it frozen as quickly as possible. That's what's going to help us keep that quality. So having a constant storage temperature of 0 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, so in the freezer, that is going to help prevent ice crystals from forming. So when the freezer temperatures get closer to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the water molecules, they want to move around a little bit and they will end up creating bigger ice crystals when it gets colder. And it's the ice crystals that breaks down the cell walls in the fruits and veggies. And that is what makes it mushy and it loses its texture. So, another thing, you put a lot of work into getting these into the freezer. What happens when we have a power outage? I don't know if you had it on the side of, yes, okay. So a full freezer will hold its temperature for about 48 hours. So if you can catch that within 2 days, you're pretty good. If it's like half full, you're looking at about 24 hours. So, yeah. Either. Mhm. Yep. When it goes through that warm, so it can kind of defrost itself. Okay, so the question was, is this just for chest freezers or the freezer and refrigerator combination? And you bring up a really good point that if you have one of the defrosting ones, self-cleaning or whatnot, yeah, that may really impact the quality. So I need to think about that more. Thank you. Uh, so having more time on our side to keep that food safe when we have a power outage, one thing you can do is take like clean milk jugs and fill it with water. That's going to create a big block of ice that's going to hold that cold in the freezer and keep the food cold. You don't really care if the ice melts, but that's going to help keep that cool in there. And then make sure you keep the freezer doors closed. If you have teenagers, that may be a trick. Okay, so when we're freezing fruits, we want to make sure that we're selecting fruits that are going to be suitable for freezing. Berries are wonderful, and there's not a whole lot of prep to them. Stone fruits work well. The apples, you do have to do a little more to them when you do that, but we're going to get to it in a second. So if you come home from the farmer's market and you got other things on your agenda for the day, go ahead and put that fruit that is unwashed, go ahead and put it into the refrigerator until you're ready to start preparing it. Don't wash it ahead of time because that's going to add moisture to the berries, and that's going to make them decline in quality really quickly. Is that making you crazy yet with the screen going on and off? So sorry about that. So once you're ready to start preparing that fruit, you want to go ahead and run that under cool running water. Don't leave it to soak because that is going to cause the berries to really mush up. So after that, you can start preparing them by removing maybe the strawberry hulls, the little tops there, cores, pits, any of the seeds. And then you have a choice of freezing it whole. You can slice it up, crush it, and even juice it. Yes. So the question was, after washing or rinsing under cool running water, they do have to be dried. So you can use like disposable paper towels. You don't really want to use a cloth one because that's going to just move any contamination around if you have it. So that way the paper towels, they're going to absorb it, you can throw it away. And the other thing, if you have a salad spinner, those work wonderfully. Just be gentle on your berries though, because you will end up with juice. Okay, so if you're doing any of the fruits like in a jam or a jelly or something like that, stay away from any equipment or pans that might be galvanized, copper, or iron. Really, they should have aluminum on here also. Those fruits have enough acid in them that it can react with those metals and it's going to cause off flavors. Okay, so a little more with freezing fruit. So they can be frozen as is. You can do syrup packs. You can do a dry sugar pack and unsweetened. You may be familiar with commercial fruit that's frozen in individual pieces. That's called individually quick frozen or IQF. And the fruit is actually frozen at very, very low temperatures. So we're talking about -20 to -60. And that's -60 degrees Fahrenheit. So what happens is the fruit is freezing really quickly and it's going to maintain its quality because the ice crystals don't have as much time to form and they are going to be less destructive. If you're doing a tray pack, which this is what they call, you have a clean cookie sheet, you lay your fruit out and get that solid enough so that when you do put it in a bag, they're separate, but they're not going to stick to each other. That's the whole point, is to be able to grab out what you want. So again, if you're going to do the tray pack, if you can set the freezer to 10 degrees Fahrenheit or lower 24 hours in advance, that's going to help get them frozen quicker. Okay, so fruit, peaches, apples, those will oxidize or darken when they're exposed to air. So there are ascorbic acid mixtures, and all that is a fancy word for vitamin C. Sometimes you'll find a mixture with sugar and citric acid. You can also use lemon juice in place of the ascorbic acid. Just make sure that you are following the manufacturer's directions and whatever the recipe is calling for. So we're kind of sticklers on any canning recipes that use bottled lemon juice, because you're trying to change the pH where the bacteria doesn't want to hang around. So problem is, if you're using like fresh lemons, fresh limes, the pH on those can vary so much that you just don't know if you have a safe product. Now, switching over to freezing vegetables, we also want to pick ones that are suitable for freezing. So again, if we tuck those away into the refrigerator unwashed, they're going to last a lot longer. Rinse them under cool running water, just like the fruits, and you can pat those dry. Thing is, some vegetables you can pop right into the freezer, but we're going to talk about the ones that need to be blanched first. So there's a lot of vegetables that need to be blanched before they're frozen. And blanching, all that is the term used for scalding the vegetable in boiling water. So the boiling water or the steam. And this is going to stop the enzyme action that is in the fruits and vegetables. What that is, the enzymes are continuing to ripen that fruit or vegetable, but they don't know when their job is done. So once your fruit or vegetable is ripe, they're going to continue trying to ripen, which ends up, what's a nice way to say that? Rotting, composting. So if we do the blanching, that's going to stop the enzyme action. So that's going to help us keep a brighter color, and it's also going to help prevent the loss of vitamins. So, that's a big thing with preserving fruits and vegetables on our own, because we want to maximize the nutritional value. So blanching, depending on what the vegetable is, you can do maybe 3 minutes and up, but we want to be careful with that, because there's a fine line between blanching and cooking the vegetables. We don't want to cook them. So we're looking at the boiling water that is at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's where water boils. And we want to have a nice rolling boil when we go to put those veggies in. And when you put them in, sometimes it will subside and you have to wait until that boiling starts again to start timing for the blanch process. So go ahead and blanch small quantities of vegetables at one time. Like I said, if you're putting a whole bunch into that pot of boiling water, it's going to take it a lot longer to get back up to 212 if you have just way too much in there. So recommended is about a pound of vegetables to a gallon of boiling water. Right here, we have a handout blanching and freezing food. So if you haven't picked that up, you can take that with you this evening. That has some other good tips on blanching. Okay, so we're going to talk about green beans. So we're just using that just so we can go through the process. So we want to pick out green beans that are younger, more tender. So the seeds have just started to form. Otherwise, we're going to have tougher green beans. My husband thinks that string beans need a string in them. So if you go with the more tender ones, they're going to be a lot better texture. So first up, we're going to want to wash that with cold water. And then we're going to snap or cut the ends off. If you do maybe like 2 to 4 inches, it's really going to help when you go to pack them. So putting long beans into a bag, or a resealable freezer bag, is kind of a losing battle. So then we're going to place the green beans into the blanching pot or stock pot, and that water is already boiling. And then once they have blanched for the specific amount of time, we're going to remove them from the hot water. Okay. Like you could have just not said anything and I would have felt bad that it was me. So, okay, where are we? So when we take out the vegetables from that boiling water, we want to immediately put that into ice water, put it in an ice water bath, because that is going to stop the cooking process. So remember, we're just blanching, we're not cooking. And then we can go ahead and pack those into freezer containers. Okay, so some veggies that we want to skip the blanching with, these are going to be veggies that have a high water content. So maybe tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, summer squash, and zucchini. You can still freeze them, but like with the onions, you would chop those up and freeze them, would not need to blanch them. The peppers, you can chop those up cut them up into the pieces that you know you're going to use. So like if you do like the onion and green pepper with potatoes, probably want that diced. You're going to take those little diced pieces of pepper and throw it into soups or chilies. But if you're going to do something like fajitas, you might want to have longer strips. So with summer squash and zucchinis, those don't need to be blanched, but if it works better for you with certain recipes, you can steam blanch them for about 1 to 3 minutes. And you're just doing that until they're translucent. That's going to help them pack well into the containers. See here. Measuring out the zucchini, that's probably a good idea because if you're gonna shred that up, most likely you're going to be making a baked good probably with the zucchini. So then if you have it measured out ahead of time, you don't have to worry about, is this too much or not enough? Okay, tomatoes. They do not need to be blanched, but some people like to remove the skins, so that can be done. I'm gonna stop right here though. Sometimes if you have tomatoes that are coming on in your garden and you don't really have enough that you want to do a whole batch, you can wash those and dry them off and put them into like a resealable freezer bag and you can freeze them. We did that yesterday in a tomato class where we let them thaw out just a little bit and then we scored the bottom, so made an X on the very bottom so that the skin will start splitting when we put it into the boiling water. So if you're using fresh tomatoes and put them in the boiling water, you're going to need maybe about 30 seconds. And if they are frozen, you're probably looking at a minute to a minute and a half. And it's amazing. You take those out of the water, you put them into the ice bath, and you can take the skins off with like no problem. Love it. And then just want to rinse those off. You notice the cores are still in these tomatoes. You can freeze it that way, or you can cut the core out, you can quarter it, you can crush it, you can make sauce with it. So tomatoes are great because there's many different stages that you can freeze it at and still have the flexibility to do other things with it. Let's talk about herbs here. So there's a few ways to freeze them. If you want to do like sprigs, I believe this is basil here. You want to be able to rinse those off with cool running water, pat them dry with a paper towel or use the salad spinner. You can wrap a few sprigs in like freezer wrap, wax paper. You can use like the parchment paper also, just so that they don't clump all together. Then you would get a freezer bag, seal it up, label, and date. But we can also chop them up and freeze them in a ice cube tray. Thing is, we got to add some water to that so it'll hold together. But those are great to throw into a sauce that, just remember, if you're doing like a soup or a sauce, you may not want to put all the water in until you figure out what you have once the herb cube has dissolved. Okay, freezing corn. So I think we're on the end of freezing corn here, or getting fresh corn, but look at this. So we want to look at using ears that have been picked within the last 24 hours. Then we're going to go ahead and remove the husk and the silk. Clean the corn under cool running water, and then they are going to go in boiling water and be blanched for 4 minutes. Now, if you are going to do corn on the cob, at this point, you can, you're going to want to blanch them a little bit longer. So you're looking at about 7 minutes. And then once they are dried off, you can put them in freezer bags. But, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot the ice. Okay, so here is kind of a helpful hack for if you're doing just corn kernels. If you have a bundt pan or an angel food cake pan, you can place the tip of the cob in the center of the hole, and that kind of keeps it steady. And then you can cut the kernels off with either a knife or an electric knife. And you're probably still going to have corn kernels all over, but most of them are going to be contained. Another thing that I have found with taking the kernels off the corn is even if you break the cob in half, it's easier to handle that and get them off rather than trying to balance, a corn cob that's that long. Okay, so next up after that, you can put them in containers. You're going to want about a 1/2 inch of headspace. So just between the top of the fruit or vegetable to the lid, and that's going to leave room so things can expand. And then you want to label and date. Has anybody ever gone in and felt like you were on a archaeology dig going into the freezer? Maybe that's just my house. Never mind. So the other thing too is if you are going to be using the corn for a recipe, you can measure it out, or you can figure out what are the serving sizes that you're going to use at your house. So if it's just you, or if it's just a passel of people, you can figure out how many servings, and that's going to make it a lot more convenient when you go to. Okay, so that goes there. So you have this corn. How long is it going to last? So the recommended storage time for sweet corn and vegetables, that's going to be 8 to 12 months. And then for the best quality, we're going to want to use shorter storage times. So just put away what you're going to use within a year, because you're going to get to the next season. You're going to want to use the new produce that is out. So when we're serving fruit, that's going to be best served with ice crystals because it's still going to have some of its texture. The frozen fruit, that can be thawed in the refrigerator. So if you were going to, I don't know, do like a berry crisp or something like that. So you can thaw them in the refrigerator, microwave, or even part of the cookie. Now, if you're using that fruit frozen and then making your apple crisp or your peach cobbler, you are going to end up having to cook it longer because it's going from the frozen state. And then with serving vegetables that have been frozen, with the corn cobs, we're going back to that. You want to let those thaw a little bit so that it's going to help to get it heated all the way through when you go to cook it. The thing is, to heat it all the way through from frozen, you might be overcooking the corn. Leafy greens, so like if you do collards, turnip greens, spinach, thawing that beforehand, just thawing it partially, that's going to help to get it heated through quicker, which means it's cooking, it doesn't have to cook as long, and it'll have more of a texture rather than turning it to mush. So when you are going to cook the vegetables, you want to go ahead and heat the water up first. Because like we said earlier, way back when we were prepping it, we didn't want to leave it soaking in water. So we really don't want it in the water too long, even when we're cooking it. So if we have that water already boiling, and usually all you need is like a half cup of water for a pint package. So not a whole lot of water at all. What you're going to be doing is once you put the veggies in there into that water, cover it, because the steam that builds up, that's really going to help cook it quicker. And then I'm going to channel my grandmother. So having a freezer inventory is really helpful because then you know what's on hand, you know what to be using. I would have loved to have gotten one of my grandmother's notebooks where she did it every day. She went gangbusters on feeding 3 different families. She didn't have to, but she really wanted to. So she would count out how many packs of green beans she did for each family. And then when it was time to do green beans the next season, she would count up how many were left. Do we need to do less? Do we need to do more? Because that's a lot of work and you don't want to waste any of that. So, and plus, that's going to help with saving money. I do want, where are we on time here? 6:47. Okay, I'll do it. Okay, we were talking about containers. A lot of times folks will use, where did I put my containers? There, yeah. We'll use like the plastic containers or the resealable bags. You notice there are some glass canning jars there tucked in there. You can freeze in glass. The only thing is you want to do the straight edges, the wide mouth ones. If you get any of the jars that have shoulders, don't use those because what's going to happen when the liquid freezes, it's got to go somewhere, and the ice is a lot stronger than glass. So make sure you're using the straight ones. I know the 80s is coming back, but yeah, no shoulder. So, questions? Yes. I would go ahead and rinse those, get them dry, and then tray pack them. Because what are you using them for? Are you using them for like muffins, or are you going to turn them into a sauce? Yeah. You put those in a chili sauce? That sounds good. Other questions? I want to be a little nosy. What are folks thinking they want to freeze for the winter? Good. Carrie, did you have any questions from the people streaming in? Okay. Okay. Did you? Okay. Well, I really, yeah, please. There are some people who will use a diluted vinegar wash. Mhm. Oh, really? Okay. Okay. Well, you got a couple of things going on there. One, you're in commercial production, and yeah, with the koshering, I'm not surprised. Yeah. What we do at home and what they have to do in manufacturing, you probably already know that is there's a world of difference. So, um, at home, no. If it makes you feel better, it's not going to hurt anything at all. So, you're not hurting anything. And you know what? If some of that vinegar stays with the fruit or vegetable that you're canning, it's probably a good thing because we're always trying to acidify tomatoes or add some kind of acid so that we are not encouraging bacteria. So, thank you for that question. Anything else you wanted to say, Carrie? And if you have